Good morning. This is Shindo. Getting back to the real news. If you want the real news, then I ask you to subscribe to my channel here. I do not and I will not monetize my channel. I spend every morning looking through the news so that I can find out what's really going on in the world, because if I am dependent upon the news from the news networks on television, I am going to be starving for any real news of any real substance. So if that's what you want, then subscribe to my channel. I ask you to click like. I ask you to share my videos. And please comment like an adult. And I would appreciate people who actually watch my videos before commenting. Today, we're going to talk about Iran and what their allies in Yemen have done, because this is essentially Iran is being blamed for this, because this is Iran's little buddies in Yemen who have fired on American forces. And per usual, this weak and ineffective government that we have in the United States of America, there was a time that I remember that the United States of America couldn't possibly have been treated this way by a bunch of nobodies like these people. But now we live in a world where everything has to be just politically correct, and we can't possibly actually stand up for ourselves anymore throughout the world. Just briefly, this is important in this issue, and it's important for people to understand this when it comes to Muslims. There are there's more than two, I'm sure, but there's two main Muslims in the world. They are the Shia and the Sunni. Now the Shia, as far as the West is concerned, are the group that we do not like to deal with. They're a little more fundamentalist, you might say. The Sunni are the ones that the United States deals with better relations with them, people like Saudi Arabia. It is a political division, not a religious one. Since its inceptions, the Muslim faith have always intertwined politics and religion. There's no separation of it the way we have over here in the West, which I'm sure there's a lot of Christians who would love it if there was no separation over here in the United States and they could have their theocracy, but that's another discussion altogether. So we have the Sunni, which is the kingdom of, in this case, since we're talking about Saudi Arabia and Yemen, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Yemen is right to the south of Saudi Arabia. And this occurred by rebels who are in Saudi Arabia. Rebels that are against Saudi Arabia who are in Yemen. This is from Al Jazeera News. U.S. Navy destroyer and missile attack. U.S. Navy destroyer and missile attack from Yemen. Saudi military base also targeted by missile fired deep inside the kingdom near holy city of Mecca. A U.S. naval destroyer has been targeted in a failed missile attack from territory in Yemen controlled by Houthi rebels, a U.S. military spokesman said. In another attack, a ballistic missile launched from Yemen targeted a Saudi air base near the Muslim holy city of Mecca. Saudis and rebel media reported Monday the deepest strike yet into the kingdom by the rebels and their allies. I can assure you Saudi Arabia is not going to sit back and put up with this, but our president, sir, will. He won't even probably comment about it. Just had missiles fired at a Navy destroyer, and he won't do a goddamn thing, I assure you. 2 missiles failed to hit the U.S. Navy ship after being launched on Sunday, Pentagon spokesman Captain Jeff Davis told Reuters news agency. Quote, USS Mason detected 2 inbound missiles over a 60-minute period while in the Red Sea off the coast of Yemen. Both missiles impacted the water before reaching the ship, unquote. He said, quote, there were no injuries to our sailors and no damage to the ship, unquote. Lieutenant Ian McConnery, a Navy spokesman, said on Monday that it was unclear if the Mason was specifically targeted, though the missiles were fired in its direction. The destroyer at the time of the missile fire was north of the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, which serves as a gateway for oil tankers heading to Europe through the Suez Canal, a defense official said. Earlier this month, Yemeni fighters said they destroyed a vessel in the Bab al-Mandeb Strait that was operated by the United Arab Emirates military, which is part of an Arab coalition fighting in support of Yemen's government against the Houthis. There was no casualties reported in the attack. On Monday, Saudi state television broadcast a brief clip of what appeared to be a projectile landing in Taif at the flash of an explosion, followed by images of emergency vehicles. Taif is a home to Saudi Arabian King Fayyad Air Base, which hosts U.S. military personnel training the kingdom's armed forces. The Saudi military said the missile fired late on Saturday, causing no damage. The U.S. military Central Command, which oversees troops in the Middle East, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Al-Mashara, a satellite news channel run by the Houthis, identified the missile as a local variant of a Soviet-era Scud missile. It said that Volcano 1 missile targeted the airbase. The Houthis have fired series of ballistic missiles into Saudi Arabia, but most have hit areas closer to the border with Yemen. In the Taif attack, however, the missile struck more than 520 kilometers from demarcation. The Saudi military also said it earlier intercepted other ballistic missile fire on Sunday, the Yemen city of Mareb. Saudi Arabia and the United States blame Iran for supplying weapons to the Houthis. Tehran views the Houthis, who are from the Shia sect, as legitimate authority in Yemen, but denies it supplies them with weapons. The missile attack followed the killing of at least 140 Yemenis in airstrikes on a funeral reception in the capital Sana'a on Saturday. More than 500 others were wounded. The Arab coalition fighting the Houthis denied responsibility, but said it would investigate the attack, which was condemned by the United Nations, European Union, and the United States. The Saudi-led coalition is battling Houthi fighters and their allies in support for President Rabu Mansour Hadi's government. Since March of 2015, the Arab alliance has pushed the opposition fighters out of much of Yemen's south, but they control nearly all of the country's Red Sea coast, as well as chunks of territory around the capital Sana'a. More than 10,000 people, including many civilians, have been killed since the conflict began. So this is a conflict that you may or may not have heard much about. Probably not, because they don't cover it that much. Between Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Let me stress, as I already have, the importance of Saudi Arabia to the United States. And one of the major reasons why Muslims generally have a problem with the United States since the Gulf War back in the early 90s. First of all, I've already discussed how Saudi Arabia is basically propping up the American dollar. If you're not familiar with that, I do have several videos talking about this deal with the 9/11 and the suing of the Saudi Arabian government and what it means to you. But from the Muslim perspective, the reason why Saudi Arabia is so important is because it is where Mecca is. Now, during the war in the early 90s, the Gulf War, the United States convinced Saudi Arabia that Iraq was going to invade, and they fudged the satellite photos showing that this was when George Bush Sr. was president of the United States. So the United States government convinced Saudi Arabia that they had to allow American troops into Saudi Arabia so that Americans could support and defend Saudi Arabia, which, of course, it's in the best interest of the United States of America to have troops in the area, and have been trying to get troops in the area for some time to protect the United States' interest. In other words, to protect oil. When the United States government, the infidel, was able to put military troops in Saudi Arabia, the same country where Mecca is, it pissed off a lot of Muslims worldwide. So although you don't hear a lot about Yemen, which again is to the south of Saudi Arabia, and their fight with Saudi Arabia, here it is again in the news. And yes, these people who fired the rockets in the direction of American forces aren't really dangerous to the United States of America, but the responses that Americans have had under this current regime here in the United States has been weak and ineffectual, and the rest of the world is not regarding the United States with any kind of any measure of respect anymore. And when we get a new president in, what you're going to see is a huge pendulum shift to the other side. I don't care which one wins. I don't care which one wins. It's going to be a huge pendulum shift to the other side. After that debate last night, if Hillary Clinton gets in there, we're going to immediately have a huge problem with Russia, which might be a bit of a problem for all of us. And of course, Russia and Iran and Syria and now even Yemen and Saudi Arabia, all of these things are connected. I hope this clarifies a little bit of what's going on over there on that peninsula. And I do ask if you like what I do to subscribe to this channel. Click like, comment like an adult, and share my videos. This is Shindo. Have a good Monday.